You're listening to the Connected Parenting Minute with Will and CarrieAnn Sandfest. This podcast is a conversation about parenting, using connection first, trauma-informed principles. Because when you lead with connection, everyone feels seen, which is the foundation to a more peaceful home. This podcast reminds you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast tonight. I'm CarrieAnn Sandfest, and with me is my adorable husband, Will.
Adorable. I'm handsome.
Oh, okay.
Dashing.
My dashingly handsome husband, Will.
Thank you. Thank you for that intro. I appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. We just thought we'd mix things up a little bit tonight, and I'd kind of take a little bit more of the lead because Will's been so great about doing that. And tonight I am jacked up to talk about the topic that we have tonight.
Ooh, tell me about it, honey.
I am. It's exciting. I actually, before you woke up this morning, I was laying in bed thinking about all the things I wanted to say on this particular podcast. And I was like, we should get up and actually record it. And now it's 10:30 at night and we're recording instead. So that's just how life goes.
That is how life goes when you've got more than the average number of children. Is that what we're trying to say?
More than the average amount of children in the house and all the things. But it's okay. It's been an interesting day.
Some of the kids came back from camp today. They were tired and stressed.
Yeah.
Other kids had a rough day because of unmet expectations.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it. That's a very positive spin to put on that.
There were a few moments of stress.
Yes, there were. But it's all good because we're here now to talk about our topic for tonight, which is, this is based off a reel you did a while back. And it was a phrase, and I don't know what better to call it, but it makes sense. So the topic is, I was wrong, in air quotes, is not a dirty phrase.
We could even call it, should parents apologize to their children?
Yeah, that's true. We could. It's a little less catchy, but
okay,
we can change it if we want because we can do that. Anyway, but the whole concept really is the fact that parents can apologize to their children. And
what?
It's actually, yeah.
What? That is crazy.
Yeah, I know. In some circles, it might be considered pretty crazy.
It is.
But, and that's really not a joke because it's very, very true. Tonight, I think we're going to just kind of explore a little bit about that concept and what we mean when we talk about apologizing and why we think it's important and what it has meant to us, and then a little bit of practical ways of being able to implement that, or good practices for implementing that.
Sounds good. Let's go.
All right. So our first point of the night is to kind of reflect first, because, we talked about in some circles, apologizing to your kids doesn't seem like a good idea.
You mean like our parents?
Yeah, maybe.
Parents that grew up in the generation of our parents, because to be honest, their parents never apologized to them.
I think our parents, that generation, grew up and the children should be seen and not heard.
Yep.
We probably, our age group wasn't as much that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I know at least my parents and probably your parents were in that generation of heck, they only can talk when we talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think our parents are trying to change things, and then we're obviously trying to change things even more.
Everybody tries to get better.
Right. Yeah. And
you try to take how you grew up and improve upon it and do your best.
And then hope that your kids do even better than what you did.
We're the perfect parents, so I don't know how they could possibly improve upon this level.
Oh dear. We might have some discussions later, honey. But so taking a time to reflect on how you grew up, or the experience that you've had, or when you hear that phrase, apologizing to your kids, what does that mean to you?
Well, what is your initial reaction? Because some of us, when we hear that, you should apologize to your kids. You've got there's a little reaction.
What?
Not every listener has that reaction, but I know there are a few, because I know in the past I had that same reaction of, I'm the parent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to apologize. They need to do it right.
Right.
Because again, that's how I grew up. And one of the things that we know, if we're being honest with ourselves, is in moments of stress, we tend to default back to how we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
right? How our parents raised us is where we go under stress or we're frustrated or overwhelmed, stuff like that. And so understanding what you would go back to, how you were raised, how your parents reacted is an important part of trying to get better and change those patterns.
Yes. And one thing that I noticed is that in my childhood, that was not a common thing, but there are a few times where one of my parents specifically addressed something that maybe they didn't do perfectly, or, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things, but that they recognized that they could have acted or reacted better in a situation and called that out and did apologize to me for that. And as a child, those things stuck in my mind. Like they really did have a huge impact on me. And I was recently talking to a friend and she never experienced that, and how that has affected her as an adult in her lifetime. And so just looking at that and going, wow, because as parents, we are continuing to grow and to learn, and we are going to make mistakes. And I think when we call that out and allow our children the freedom to know that, yeah, we do make mistakes and we own them and we try to make them right and we try to keep going forward. What a great example is that for our kids to be able to see, you know what, my parent is messing up, but they own it and they move forward and they keep going. And so I think that's a really important thing to almost a daily example for our kids.
Well, because again, most of us growing up had the experience where at one point or another, a parent refused to admit they were wrong or dismissed your feelings or wouldn't apologize or something like that. And we can remember how frustrating that was, just how angry or just, whatever the feelings were at that moment. But I can feel those feelings thinking about
right?
it, how frustrating that was. And if we're in this moment of self-reflection, we don't want to really put our kids in that same place and put them through those same situations. We want to find ways to do it better.
Right. And so that kind of brings us to our second point, actually, is that when we recognize that apologizing or apologies are important and that they do make an impactful statement, I guess, in our child's life, like that shows them something really important. When we recognize that, hopefully we can carry that out and actually start applying that in our kids' lives. One of the points that is, I think, important to remember, and one of the things that you often share with me, because you work on weightlifting, you have on and off for like forever. I mean, since college, and then, you sometimes don't do it as much, but now you've really gotten back into it. But I always remember you explaining to me at first that like when you start weightlifting or when you move up in weight and stuff like that, your muscles get really sore because there's like micro tears in them.
Yep.
And as they heal, they become stronger. You build more muscles, and that's a mentality with our kids. I mean, it's kind of a stretch, but stick with me. When you have this rupture, this tear, this disruption of your, connected relationship, but then you as the adult take the time to seek that out and specifically repair that, you're building a strong relationship with your kids.
Yeah, because that repair gives the relationship a chance to heal and get stronger.
Right. And I think part of it too is also recognizing, like really truly believing that I don't always have the right answer. Considering that I could be wrong and considering that maybe there's a different opinion that my kid has and they're not necessarily wrong either. Like we can both be right about something and that's okay. We can have a difference of opinion.
Well, and how many times do you have a frustration or a point of stress in a relationship as an adult? And in the end, it turns out it was just a matter of perspective. It was just that you two you were looking at the same thing from different sides. And once you step over to their perspective and once they step over your perspective, you're both totally on the same page. It's just that difference of perspectives. And it's the same thing with our kids. And we should expect that because they are children and we are adults. And we inherently have different perspectives on these situations as to what happened and what went on. And modeling apologies when we are wrong is super important. But that also reminds me of another point I'd like to make is that you don't just apologize when you were the one that was wrong.
Ooh, say more about that.
So when you apologize to somebody, when there's been a rupture in in a relationship, there is always something that you probably could have done differently. Maybe you raised your voice, maybe you stomped off, maybe you threw a towel, maybe you did something.
Okay. Well, I'll let you continue this and then I'm going to elaborate on that. But go ahead.
But, there's something in there that you probably could have handled better.
Yep.
Even if you were completely 100% right about the disagreement. By going and apologizing for the part that you played in escalating the fight and whatever it was, you are telling them that you value the relationship more than the fight.
Ooh.
Right? Because when you have a rupture, that repair is about relationship. And so me going and apologizing to my kid when he was being completely unreasonable over some situation, like say video games, hypothetically, if he's being super unreasonable about video games and there's a whole disagreement, me going back to him and trying to reconnect and apologizing, saying, I'm sorry that you didn't feel heard. I'm sorry that I raised my voice. Whatever whatever you can find in that you can own, by you going to him and owning that and apologizing, you're telling him that he matters, that the relationship with him matters, and you want that to be better.
Yep. So I think that's a really good point to make, that it's about the relationship. And sometimes even coming in and owning the part of it that you may be reacting poorly to, even if the whole thing is completely, out of your control, but you own the parts that maybe you could have done better. Even sometimes in the middle of the argument can break down some walls and break down some defenses.
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't have to be later.
Yeah, no, it really can. And so if you can kind of in the moment, take a couple breaths, be able to say, you know what, I did that and that was wrong of me. I am sorry and I am apologizing for that. So I have to elaborate on this towel thing because we kind of maybe had a little bit of an argument tonight in particular. And I may have, in my moment of frustration, but knowing that it would not cause any physical harm in any way, dropped a towel on a child's head. But then I just have to laugh because it was really, really stupid, but I was really frustrated. And so I'm just like, boom, throw this towel down the stairs and it landed on this kid's head. But then as we were arguing later a little bit, I was like, you know what? I threw that towel at you and that was wrong. I am sorry. And this child,
it kind of disarmed him.
It did a little bit. And so I was like, okay, well, I own that, but I knew that was important to own because that was really childish of me. But in the moment, I was really frustrated.
But that's real. I mean, that's how you feel in that moment.
Totally like transparent. I am definitely an awful parent sometimes moment. I mean, that's just to let you know that there are stupid little things that we do that we get frustrated about and we know we shouldn't, or we know that we react poorly. But owning those gives us freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I mean, it not only lets our kids know that we know that we're not perfect, but then it gives us freedom. I mean, really, forgiveness gives freedom. And so it allows that connection to flow. It allows those barriers to be broken down. And so I think that's really the point here, is be able to say, I was wrong to your kid and own it and say, will you please forgive me?
And I think that really leads into, how do you apologize well? Because as we said earlier, some people haven't had this modeled very well for them growing up. They are used to apologize to your sister. Sorry. That's not an apology.
Right.
And so you've got somebody who realizes they could have handled the situation better. They want to go to their kid. They want to apologize. What is a good framework to start with?
So I think that when we want to apologize, one of the things that we miss a lot of times, it just ends up, like you said, being, well, sorry. We miss the opportunity to call out what it is that actually happened. So this is very, very humbling as the adult, or even as a friend. When we come to a friend or we come to our kid and say, you know what, I know that I did this. So I know that I tossed a towel at your head and that was wrong of me. Like, I shouldn't have done that. That was childish and that was immature. And that was something I shouldn't have done. will you please forgive me? And so it's calling out what you did, acknowledging the fact that you were the person in the wrong in that situation, because a lot of people have really, really hard time saying I was wrong.
Yeah.
And so like that part, I think we call out specifically in our family just to get that practice in, because I think it's a really good thing to be able to say I was wrong. I was wrong. You know, how many times
adults that won't admit they're wrong drive you nuts.
Well, it's hard because everybody's wrong sometimes. And so
at least I'm less right sometimes, occasionally.
I knew you were going to make that joke. All right. So calling out what you did, calling out the fact that you were not in the right in that situation, and then asking for forgiveness specifically. Mm-hmm. I think those are the first really good 3 steps.
Kind of the 3 pieces you would say.
And one of the hard parts that I'm going to say though, is that when you ask for forgiveness, you can't force your kid to say, yes, I forgive you. Now, we've been very, very blessed with a lot of our kids just being like, oh yeah, I forgive you. And I think a lot of them are used to us doing this. I think we've been doing this for quite some time.
Yeah.
But it was impressed on us really early on to do that with our kids. I think that a lot of times they offer that forgiveness easier to us than they do their siblings.
Yeah.
But I
absolutely.
also don't force them to forgive their siblings. I think that is a thing that they need to be ready to do. So sometimes when those kids are going back and forth and someone's like, sorry, I hit you, will you forgive me? You know, and we're not forcing this, but they know that that's part of the protocol eventually of like making things right with each other. And the other kid's like, no, I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Or I'm not ready to talk to you yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're still really upset.
Yep.
And so we really try to encourage them they can take a break. They can whatever, but to come back, not to let it slide.
Yep. Yeah. Because that's the thing that's easy to do is you step away, you calm down, and you're not as worked up about it. And you just kind of,
you're like, I don't really want to go back and then bring that up again. Cause then I have to admit that I was wrong.
And we as parents are guilty of that too.
Yes.
Oh, this is getting heated. Maybe you have the self-awareness to step away and regulate yourself. And then you're like, I don't really want to poke that bear again. I'm just going to pretend nothing happened. Mm-hmm. Which again is not what you want to model for your kids, because more is caught than taught.
Right.
Our kids are unfortunately going to act the way that we act.
Right.
For better and for worse. Mm-hmm. You know, us working on modeling what we expect them to do is fundamentally important.
That's really good. One thing I do want to point out is that this doesn't always have to be some kind of conflict that we're having.
Okay.
For an example, we could have something that maybe just annoys us about our kid. For instance, they do something that's really frustrating or irritating, but not necessarily anything that they're doing is wrong.
Okay.
For example, I've got a kid sometimes who plays with their pen during church and
click, click.
Holy donuts. Sometimes that is a huge trigger for me, especially if they're sitting right next to me and I'm like, oh my goodness, stop. Or I'm going to take the pen and break it because I can't stand this right now. Mm-hmm. Now, is that the end of the world? No. Is that something that I should be freaking out over? No. Is it annoying to me? Yes. So as the adult, I can, if I do react poorly to that, I, can own that and apologize. But then I can also look and say, well, how can I react differently in the future? I can not have them sit next to me. Won't annoy me as much. I could ask them to play with something else because maybe they need a fidget of some kind and they need to keep their fingers doing the right things or entertained. Maybe they need that to focus. I don't know. But just being self-aware enough to know that that irritates me, but it's not necessarily something that's bad or wrong or something that I need to change about them. I just might need to rearrange the situation a little bit so it doesn't bother me as much as.
All right. Good.
So.
Well, I think we're about out of time.
Okay.
So let's do our recap.
Really quick recap. So first point being, think how you were raised. Spend some time reflecting on what experience you have with apologies in adults or your parents or the other caregivers in your life. And then think about how you view a parent's apologizing to kids.
All right. And number 2?
You got to recognize and believe that apologies are important in order to actually start moving in this direction. to recognize that rupture and repair is a part of a healthy, connected relationship.
Yeah, relationship cycle. It's a natural part of a relationship.
Right? Because you're building trust, you're building camaraderie in experiencing these things, but experiencing them together rather than letting them pull you apart.
Excellent. And number 3,
establish a rhythm of how to apologize.
a rhythm, a framework.
A framework, a scenario that works for you and your family. And I mean, heck, you can even talk to your kids. Hey, what do you think about apologies? What do those look like to you? What do you think is important in
Have you
that?
ever had a good apology? Have you ever had a bad apology?
Right.
Could be a whole little discussion with your kids.
It could. And depending on the age of your kids, just take that into account and look at that, in establishing your framework. I think it'll really help you. And again, scripting. We talk about scripting.
There it is.
And so pre-deciding what your reaction's going to be.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, since you're hosting tonight, would you like to take us out, baby?
Yeah, I can. So thank you for listening to the podcast tonight, where we're so happy that you've joined us. If you want to connect with us, what is the email?
connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.
There we go. So email us with your ideas, any questions you might have, anything we can answer for you. And we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
I don't remember the rest of it.
That's all I have to say. You're good.
Oh, okay. All right. And remember, you don't have to be a perfect parent.
But we can all get a little bit better. One Connected Parenting Minute at a time.
Thanks for listening to my mom and dad's podcast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the like button like 10 billion times. Yeah!
For more parenting tips or to connect with us, check out the Connected Parenting Minute on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can send us an email using connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.